Let me just have a few words introducing myself. I'm a lecturer at San Jose State University in the Department of Chemical and Materials Engineering. I've been teaching part-time since 2013, so it's been quite a few years. So I'll share with you about my experience of learning and implementing the specification grading. Okay, so in 2021 summer, and I participated in the STEM course redesign program, the TEA program. So through the 2 weeks program, I learned about the spec grading. So with the encouragement of the program instructor, so I implemented the spec grading in a lab course that I taught in 2021 fall semester. And I'll tell you a little bit about the course. So in this 2021 fall semester, I teach 195.01, which is mechanical property of materials. This is a lecture part of the course. And 195.03 is a companion lab course for the same course. The grades or the both part of the course will roll into one course grade. Okay, so I decided to implement the spec grading in the lab course. So I defined among through the semester, each student will need to submit 3 major lab reports among other assignments. So I defined the 12 essential learning objectives and the 6 general learning objectives, and pretty much 4 ELO and 2 GLO for each lab report. The lab course lends itself pretty well to adopt the spec grading because students learned in the lecture part of the course, what they learned can be applied to the lab course. And the student could analyze the real lab data to carry out the analysis. Instead of some real, the only lecture course, when they need to do data analysis, they will need to use the made up data. So in this case, they actually can have a hands-on experimentation. In this case, it's mechanical testing of sample through the instrument. They will have a stress, strain data, and then they can extract many of the materials properties through the data. And they can use the real data to apply what they learned in the lecture course to the lab. Okay, so the analysis required for those ELO and GLOs are all really fundamental concepts and parameters that each materials engineer and mechanical engineer really need to know. Okay. So for example, this is just one of the examples, one of the ELO, and I won't go into very detail, just briefly to mention, this is to extract 0.002 offset yield strength for material from the data, from the stress strain data or from the instrument data. Okay, so student in the course consists of junior student, senior student, or graduate student. For graduate student, this is one of the transition courses that we need to take to be admitted to the materials engineering master program if their undergraduate majors are not materials engineering. So all those students have been around for a long time, so not freshman and sophomore kind of thing, okay? So I briefly described to the student the spirit of the spec grading, and I emphasized to them that each student will need to include in the lab report a specific section and analysis for those ELO and GLOs. I think I need to speed up a little bit. Okay, so from hindsight, I probably did not spend sufficient time and effort to fully educate students about the spec grading. Okay, so let's see the students' response. The first submission or the first report, most students did not meet the requirement. When I discuss with the report student, some will argue, even though I didn't do that, why couldn't I get a partial credit through all my learning career? I always get partial credit. And number two, then some students will argue, I didn't really state my analysis, but from this section, I stated so and so. This implies I really understood what you want, and I kind of demonstrated. So, all right. So I said, I stood my ground. I said, no, you need to really fully comply with my requirement, and so on and so forth. So the resubmission obviously improved the grade substantially. By the time the second report, the compliance rate is much better, but not all of them. They probably reluctantly to do that. By the third report, they did pretty well. Okay, so they kind of accepted their fate to do this. Okay, so in my opinion, all the students in the course have been around for a long time. They have been fully conditioned to the traditional way of grading. That means they get partial credit here and there, and they nickel and dime the bargaining with the professor about a few points here and there. And I'm probably the only one adopting the spec grading in the department. I'm almost like standing against the tide. Another thing I want to just mention, many of the California State University students, probably not full-time students, they need to work, they need to take a lot of courses. They are in a hurry to graduate. Probably UC student, probably more full-time student, they're probably better quality student too. So it's hard for me to criticize them for their attitude, for their not putting in sufficient effort in the report. So summary, I would think most of the participants in this program probably all fully convinced about the merit of spec grading. And I do clearly see the merit of spec grading. However, for example, this is one of the comment in my student course evaluation. The grading felt like it was all or nothing, make it stressful to take the assignment. Okay, so, and at the end, most of the students actually end up with pretty good grade because they have a chance to resubmit. However, my course evaluation is not as good as my previous one. The same, I mean, this is not first time. I taught this lab course a few times. Obviously, I think I spend more time in this time. I probably more experience in teaching. So I would think my performance is as good. However, I think I do feel the resistance from the student. So summary, I don't regret this experiment. However, I think to get the spec grading adopted, students need to start from freshmen to be conditioned for this. And they need to be adopted by more instructor instead of a loner, I would think, like me in the department. All right, that's my story. Thank you.